Hey everyone, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my 2020 Q&A. Now, before we get started, I want to thank everyone who submitted questions. I also want to thank anybody who said really kind things. I don't necessarily address it every time in this video, but people were very, very nice, and I really appreciate it, so thank you for that. So on YouTube and on Instagram, I asked people to contribute questions for a Q&A. I eliminated anything that might have been a repeat or something, and basically just went through all of them, and as the answer came to me, I recorded it. So these aren't pre-scripted, and there's almost no editing, and I have time lapses running in the background because I just needed something on screen, because I was originally going to film myself as I did with the previous Q&A I did a couple years ago, but finding time to do that is like impossible. So instead, we're going to do it all with time lapses running in the background from things you've seen before, little images here and there, and that's basically it. So if you've watched my channel before, you don't really even have to watch the screen. You can basically just listen to this like it's a podcast. If you hate the sound of my voice, you can leave now. So, thanks for coming to my Q&A. Let's go ahead and start with the first question. Joshua Yu asks, what is your ultimate goal as an artist? That's actually pretty hard to answer. I mean, that's sort of like, I don't really ever know what my ultimate goal is with just about anything, really. So I would say that I've just kind of always drawn and done art ever since I was little, and so I never really thought about like why I'm doing anything. I just did it and continue to do it, and even still, I mean, the whole reason I do these YouTube videos or post on the internet or anything like that, there's really no ultimate goal other than just like I want to keep doing art. So I think the ultimate goal, I guess, would be to have a life that I'm happy with and look back on and feel like I had fun, and that I can be content with it, and that art was a big part of it. And so far, art is a big part of my life, which is awesome. And so now I just need to keep doing it, and I guess just not die with any horrible list of regrets, which might actually be kind of hard, but we'll see. I'll let you know in about, well, I don't know how many years. I'll try to let you know before I die. The Digital Noodle asks, are you satisfied with the level of art you are creating? Do you go through the my art is crap phase? Am I satisfied? Yeah, I'm satisfied right now. I think that that's kind of always the artist's like motto, is that like, yeah, I'm super happy most of the time with what I've created right now, and then that decays over time. It's like a thing you have to keep up. It's like you get the high of creating the art, and then slowly over time, which is kind of a good thing, as you're creating new art that is hopefully better, you are falling out of love with your older stuff. I think you're always going to be able to contextualize that properly so that you don't completely hate everything that you've ever done. At least I think a lot of people can. Some people do hate everything that they've ever done. But I think that you can contextualize it so that you don't just flat out hate everything, and you understand that like you're a different artist, or that you're growing, or whatever it is. So yeah, I'm happy with my stuff most of the time, and then over time I'm like, okay, I can do better now, or ooh, I really wish I would have done something or taken more time, or whatever it is. Do I go through the my art is crap phase? No, in a way. And I think that to clear that up, what I mean is I understand that I have lows, and I understand that artists in general have lows. And I think that if you understand that everybody goes through the same creative process, everybody goes into like the valley of despair, everybody hits those phases where they're just like, I'm supposed to be good at this, why am I not good at this? I think that I'm conscious of the fact that you can hit those lows. That doesn't mean that I don't get like frustrated when I'm in the middle of something, but I never really go into like the full on my art is crap. Instead, I'm just like, oh shit, I'm in one of those situations, and then I try to just get myself out of it. And getting myself out of it is sometimes it's just about time, it's about doing more art, it's about whatever. But I would say that that is more the state that I enter. Ben Skinner asks and says, he's very complimentary here. Thank you very much for your kind words. Love your channel and your artwork. How do you come up with your ideas for illustrations? Can you teach us about shape design choices? I've noticed some things that you do that others don't. I'm paraphrasing. I would love to understand the fundamentals you go through to get to a final piece. So again, thank you for your kind words. So as far as where I get my ideas, the ideas are just random inspiration, and not like in some sort of a dramatic way. It's literally just like I'm sitting down and I think of a thing and I'm like, yeah, okay, what about that? And then I knock it around for a while and I decide, okay, let's do more, let's do this, whatever. It's just sort of like a natural thing. It's not one of those inspiration moments where it, like, you know, you fall and hit your head in the bathtub and you're like, I've got it. It's really just like a long process. Well, sometimes it's a short process, but usually the shorter the process, the more it's just like something I've been thinking about for a while anyways. And then I was like, oh, I should finally get around to actually drawing that. Other times it's about piecing together elements. Like if you've watched my channel for a while, you'll see that I've got some pieces where it's just like I saw this person on the train and they were wearing something weird and it made me, or interesting, and it made me think like, okay, I should paint that. And so it can come from a lot of different places. Something like what you're watching right now on screen while I'm talking. This was just, it was Halloween, I wanted to do a zombie and I wanted to play with some shapes that I really hadn't played with before. That kind of leads into your shape language question. Yes, I can talk more about character design from a proportions point of view and sort of like what I do with shapes, shape language. I don't really talk about that much. I honestly don't know why, I just kind of don't. And I think that would require a pretty in-depth breakdown. So what I'll do is I'll take this question a little bit more as like a suggestion, and then I'll try to get something like that around. People have been asking for this for a while, and I've probably said, yeah, I'd love to, I'll do it soon, and then I didn't. And that's just because these things can be really challenging to put together, these videos, and finding the right time can also be challenging. So I'll do my best, and I'll try to get something like that around soon. And until then, hopefully the videos provide enough right now that you can sort of go through them and pick apart some of my decision making, and maybe you can figure it out. mstory67 asks, can you do another step-by-step drawing in, say, 3 or 4 episodes? I always go back to your original, and then they link the original, but with the new Procreate features, it's time for an update, please. Okay. mbaining11 asks, what the hell are you doing in Germany? Exit. Spain? Well, I am doing in Spain the same thing that I did in Germany, just for a different company. I work in video games, and I am an art director, and both in Germany and in Spain, I am the studio art director for new games for the 2 various companies. I'm currently at King, who many of you may know as the people who made Candy Crush, and that's where I have been for almost a year and a half now. So it's been pretty wild to, born and raised in Chicago, and then San Francisco for 11 years, and then Germany for 2.5 years, and now here in Spain. So it's pretty exciting to be able to try all of these cultures. It's been enlightening, to say the least, and it's taught us a lot about ourselves as a family, and like our values and what we're really interested in. And so the life part is one component, and then the work part is the other component. And all in all, it's been a really fun and challenging at times experience. And so yeah, that's what I'm doing in Spain. I'm making video games, man. Same thing I do in basically any country I'm in. Grizzly Miller asks, traditional corn dogs or breakfast corn dogs, and why did you choose breakfast corn dogs? Man, I'm not gonna choose breakfast corn dogs, not when the real deal is out there and edible and easily obtainable. Even here in Spain, I can get real corn dogs, not these Jimmy Dean bullshit corn dog. Actually, they're both awesome. The next question is from Julian Viagran. This is kind of unrelated to the Q&A, but I'm a senior in high school and I'm about to go to college. Basically, he asks if he can exchange emails so we can get in contact and I can give him some advice. And then he also goes on to say, another question I would want to see answered is, do you prefer the line art and posing and constructing the piece, or do you enjoy rendering more? So this is a pretty big set of questions, although the answer I think is pretty simple. As far as exchanging emails and asking questions and giving feedback and that type of stuff, I don't exchange emails with people. I usually keep my email for business purposes, but I'm super reachable in general, whether it's Instagram or messaging on ArtStation or DeviantArt or any of these places. Basically, any place that has a messaging service that you know I'm on, I try to be as receptive as possible. I don't think there's really ever been a case where I don't get back to somebody. And if I have and you're watching, hit me up again so I can give it another shot, because sometimes things just slip through the cracks. I'm happy to help people, and I use those services as a better way to sort of separate casual conversation from something that is more related to me or my career or business or something like that. So, no on the email, but yes on the communication. Hit me up in those spots. Now, as for the question about whether or not I prefer line art or rendering, that really depends on my mood. I think that the sketch phase is super open and fun and loose, and the painting phase is also pretty open and fun and loose for me. If there's a stage in there where I have to do tight lines, that's more about executing and precision, and that means that I'm not necessarily as relaxed while I'm doing that. So you could say that the tight line is nice because I do kind of turn my brain off and I've got the sketch there, and then I just sort of, it's just like execute, and I can pay attention to other things. However, if I was lazy on the sketch and I have to do some thinking during the lining process, then I usually really have to focus, and it's kind of annoying. Otherwise, that's nice and relaxing. The part with the painting is more creatively stimulating, same thing with the sketch phase, and I feel like I'm just more kind of having fun and playing, and I can define things without having to be super precise, at least when I'm working in a style like what you're seeing on screen right now. So wow, I feel like that got ramblier than I wanted it to, but I guess the real answer is it depends on my mood. Lately though, it has not been about line art. You can see through everything that I've been posting, I've been pulling up like old lines and coloring them, so it's been a lot about rendering. So lately it's been a lot about rendering. However, whenever I feel like, oh man, I just want to do some line stuff, not only will I do it, but I'll also try to maybe contribute to my A Village Corrupted series, which is super line driven, and that would be the way that I would say, like, let's do lines, let's pull out a character from there and draw them and develop them and sort of get into that line headspace, I guess. Geez, that's like no answer. Hopefully it was good enough. We good? Moving on. Manuel Herrera says, did you usually plan ahead your drawings? How much time a drawing can be floating around in your mind before you decide to start working on it? An extra question, which artists inspired and still inspire you? So as for whether or not I plan my drawings ahead, I don't plan them ahead as far as which pieces I'm going to do. Some of what I post is sort of planned ahead only because I complete it and then I sit on it and then I eventually put it out. But as far as planning the drawing when I'm in the middle of doing it, I definitely do that. I mean, that's sort of the whole sketch process. You'll see me in a lot of these videos, I'm playing around with the composition or the proportions portions or whatever it is. And that's me sort of establishing my plan. The rough sketch then is the plan for the next stage, and then the next stage and the next stage. So you could say that the rough sketch, or the super rough, is the plan for the rough, which is the plan for the lines, which is the plan then for the colors. If there's no tight lines, then the rough is the plan for the colors. So everything you're doing should be setting you up to do the next stage, I guess, including showing it to somebody. You should be wrapping up the whole part where you complete the image, and then that's just preparing it for the next step, which is letting somebody see it. So as for artists who inspired me and those who still do inspire me, I think I've covered this before, but I'll do it again really quickly. I think I have some influences that are clear, and I have some influences that are unclear. Some of the ones that are really clear, I think, to most people is Joe Madureira was an influence on me. I was in middle school when he was blowing up, and then into high school, so that was super formative, and still to this day, the stuff that he does is just nuts. So I still get inspired by him. I also get inspired by a lot of other comic book artists, especially ones that were particularly big back then in that same era. Still, a lot of them are still working today, like Ed McGuinness. I love Ed McGuinness. I think that his work is awesome, and I still follow him on Instagram and try to keep up with everything he does. There's a number of them. Going through specifics beyond that, though, I think would just be a disservice, because I would start forgetting key people. So let's just say there are more. As far as the ones that I think stand out less maybe in my work are all of my manga and anime influences. For instance, Hiroaki Samura has always been a huge influence on me. Rumiko Takahashi is a huge influence. I think Meizani Koku is the greatest thing ever written. And Gosho Aoyama is awesome. Kenichi Sonoda is awesome. So I have a lot of love for anime and manga, and the stuff that I found to just the stuff that really resonated with me still finds some sort of aspect, it finds its way into some aspect of my artwork. So some of that, again, you might not look at a Rumiko Takahashi character and say, oh yeah, I see where that's in there. But I think that some of my anime influences come in more strongly in my roughs stage, because in my roughs is when things are more like symbols and they're like just quick ideas. And then as I flesh it out a little bit more and I start establishing a little bit more anatomy that's closer to realism, I'm never going for realism, but something that's closer to a structure you might find in reality, then it starts pulling away from some of those anime symbols. So yeah, I think that those would be some of my absolute biggest influences. And then there are other people as well that I wouldn't say were like influences, but they inspire me still to this day, because, or not to this day, sorry, they're contemporaries and they inspire me all the time. I think Instagram is just absolutely nuts for being inspired. People like Rob Mommertz, who's just, that guy blows me away. If you don't know him, look him up. Max Greca is always doing amazing stuff. That guy is just a dynamo. And I mean, I'm naming names right now because I'm just trying to like give some love there, but at the same time, like, Instagram is just go there, digest, be inspired, and because that's what I do, and that's what all the artists I know do. Like, I just hope that everybody knows that, like, we're all artists because we love art, we like making it, we like seeing it, we like digesting it, we like then regurgitating all of those influences back out onto the page. So whether or not somebody is considered something like an amateur or somebody is a pro, like, we're all doing this, every artist of every type. So yeah, there's lots of people who've inspired me and influenced me, and there will be more. So cool, I hope that answers that. Grizzly Miller again. He asked, how's Barcelona? What's your favorite thing to do there? That's actually a pretty easy question. It's the same thing that I love to do in any city, which is just walk around. I love cities and I'm sort of like at heart a city person, and so I live in the suburbs right now. I actually live just outside of Barcelona, but I have to go into Barcelona for work, and my commute is train and walking and things like that, and I just love walking through cities in general. So that's my favorite thing to do on a regular basis. Although my favorite thing I've done is for a work event, we took a boat out into the Mediterranean and basically jumped in. That was super cool. That's probably like just an amazing check it off the list kind of thing. So that was fun. Kukio asks, how could somebody who already has a decent portfolio but has little professional experience and already has a different job, how can they get an art job? So, this is a very difficult topic to try to give advice to, especially when you're not directly referring to somebody's portfolio or having a long conversation about what they've already tried in order to get a job. In order to answer this question so that it applies to the most people, I'll try to focus on what people are looking for when they're hiring more than the individual person's situation. When someone is trying to hire, they have to have a few things already lined up in order to hire you. One is they have to have a need that they are allowed to fulfill. And a need just means that they are looking for somebody to do art that is similar to what you do. The second part of that, which is be allowed to, it can be something as simple as just they've got $500 in their pocket and they want to pay somebody $500 to do some art, or it could be something like in a big company they need to get some amount of approvals or something. So that is sort of the bare minimum that needs to happen before there's even an opportunity for you to get work with somebody. The next thing that needs to happen is a potential employer has to know about you. They have to be able to discover you, and that can be anything from having an Instagram account, because a lot of people look at Instagram. It could be about being on LinkedIn and making yourself available there. It could be about appearing in interviews places, or starting some sort of an art group online that you can use to promote, or anything, really anything. Whatever you can do to raise your visibility is the next thing that needs to happen. They can't hire you if they don't know you exist. And the third thing that they need is your portfolio needs to sync up with what they are looking for and be better than another viable option for them. So when you reduce it down to these sort of three factors, they need to have a need, they need to know you exist, and your work needs to be of the type and quality that they're looking for. It's actually pretty simple to see where things can potentially break down for you. It's also, by the way, very easy to hear that description and be like, well, I'm fucked. There's no way that I can do this, or there's no way that I could do that, or whatever. That's obviously a negative way to look at it, and depending on your situation, that also might be a really easy way to look at it, in the sense of not easy like it's a cop out, easy like, yeah, that could be your reality, and that sucks, and it's time to start looking for alternative ways to impact those qualities. But there is one other way to look at this, which is that if those things are defined, you can work towards changing them. Now, one of those three things is not in your hands at all. One of them is only partially in your hands, and the third one is completely in your hands. You can't control whether or not somebody out there has the ability to hire you. So instead, you try to cast a wide net, you look at the companies that you might want to work for, and you wait for opportunities. When we move on to the second one, there's only half as many things as is in your control, which is you can put yourself out there as much as possible, but if the people looking for the work for some reason aren't looking in the areas you've put yourself, then they won't find you, which is why the only thing you can control there is being in as many places as possible. And the third aspect you completely control, which is your portfolio. You don't control whether or not it syncs up exactly with what somebody would want, but you can control things like quality, breadth. Quality and breadth. Is that really it? There's other qualities, but the point is that you need to be able to deliver whatever it is that you want as a job at a high quality, because there are other people out there who are doing the exact same thing you are. Maybe they're working harder, or maybe they've been working longer at it. Maybe they have more connections, so that second part they have a little bit more under their control. So you need to think about, what is it that you need to do for your portfolio? What is it that you need to achieve? And put all of that work in. Plus, keep in mind that there are other people busting their asses to do the same thing. Now, as I said before, you could look at that and be like, boosh, that sucks. And to some degree it does, unless you're willing to go after that challenge and accept the fact that you're going to have to find whatever that is that separates you from everyone else, and make your mark and make yourself known to people, and do it at a super high quality, and get to the point where people think of you and they think of their needs, and it's a no-brainer for them. Now, what happens when you're in a situation like described in this question, where you have another job and you're trying to also do this, and as this person put, you have as Kukio put, you have a decent portfolio. I think you need to start looking at, first of all, do you have a decent portfolio? You have to look at your own work, compare it to the industry, compare it to the options that these other people have, these hiring people have, and ask yourself, do I stand out against this crowd? You might also want to look at who it is that you are trying to get a job with. There are people out there that maybe they don't have the money or the access to people who are incredibly good or the top in their field. So then you have to figure out, like, can I actually get in there, build the portfolio, build the reputation, and then transition that into bigger fish down the line. And then the thing about having the other job, yeah, that sucks. I am lucky in the sense that I have had other jobs while trying to get work in the industry, but I haven't had like a full-blown career type job. So if you're talking about like you're a bank teller and it's 30-hour a week job or 20-hour a week job, then like, okay, just make the time. Like, so many people do that, and that's just sort of like a tough love situation. Like, just make the time, get your portfolio where it needs to be, and move on. If you're somebody who is working a full-blown career where you're putting in 50, 60 hours a week, and you don't see where the space is for you to work on your portfolio, that's a lot harder, and I sympathize with being put in that position. Unfortunately, the feedback kind of ends up still being the same, which is what you're looking to do is get a portfolio that makes you competitive, so you just have to do that. You have to fill every spare hour of your day with working on your portfolio if that's truly what your goal is. Work on your portfolio, work on your networking, and get that job, and then you can get yourself out of that situation. It's not a slam dunk. I'm not saying that it's like a recipe you follow and then it just happens. It's just that is the only way is affecting those qualities that I talked about. So making yourself available also includes networking as much as possible, and then working on your portfolio. But I sympathize with somebody in that position. The industry does not change what it's looking for based on individual situations. So it makes it so that if you were dealt a bad hand, it's impossible. Well, not impossible, but it's very challenging to try and get around that. And so instead, the best advice I can do is the best advice I can give is to just say, keep cranking on those things that matter, and hopefully things will work out. Francois LeBlanc 868 asked, looking back in terms of growth, is there anything you would have done differently? If so, what would it have been? Damn, that's a real philosophical one, right? Because it's about sort of, I'm happy with where I am. I'm happy with who I am as an artist. So the idea of sort of, changing that and saying, what would I have done differently? I just don't know if I'd end up where I am. But I guess in the spirit of the question and just trying to not overthink it, I think there's probably some times where I would have focused on what type of art I was making, or better yet, I would have informed a younger me about different types of art that I could be doing sooner. And by different types of art, I mean specifically what are the jobs out there for me. I think that when you look back at what my art has always been like, it was obvious that I was going to end up being a concept artist or a development artist, a viz dev artist, something like that. But I had no idea what that was or what that meant for the longest time, really. When I was a kid, and I'm talking even like first grade, I was basically creating pitch packets for like stuff. It wasn't necessarily that it was an animated series or a video game or something, but it was like characters and locations and backstories and coming up with that stuff. And I think that if I had known sooner, it didn't have to be that soon, but maybe something like high school, that was a really good way to take my art and to focus on the craft of concept art, I probably would do that, because that would have cut out like years of kind of wanting to be in comic books but not really knowing, and doing lots of character design work for fun but not doing it in a way that was applicable to an industry, just more drawing characters all the time. I mean, what you see me do on this channel isn't really character design. It's not really visual development work. You're not seeing the development part. You're basically seeing me in my brain just say, I want to draw this right now, and then I do it. And there's design that goes into it, and there's development that kind of goes into it, but it's not truly the profession of concept art or character design. So I think I would have just informed my younger self about that type of a field, and then shown myself like, you know, you can do something more like this, and then it's more applicable to what an industry would actually need. That way I just wouldn't waste my time. I shouldn't say waste my time, because again, that goes back to the whole thing about, you know, the artist I am today is because of things like that, but I would have just been more disciplined about techniques and processes and understanding what a company wants, so that I could tailor everything that I do towards something like that. Peter Tasev Art asks, how do you keep your work, files, and reference organized? I'm in such a mess with too much stuff, and I have trouble finding what I'm looking for. So this is a pretty complex topic in general, because file systems, there are ways to keep track of your stuff that is kind of universally strong, but then there's also things where you're trying to game your own brain. Like, how do you like to see things organized? Is there a better way to organize something where you will always be able to find it? Or is there a pattern to the way that you set things up, or the programs you use, and like all of that stuff? Instead, I'm just going to explain how I do it and see if it resonates with you at all. For all of my Procreate stuff, all of my Procreate files are saved locally to my iPad so that I can access them whenever I want, and then they're all backed up to iCloud. I just like the integration with iCloud, and I already am firmly in the Apple ecosystem across the board, so I just use iCloud for sort of like everything. So that's all broken into the exact same filing system, you could say, that Procreate uses. So if it's a single piece where I didn't have to do any additional files, those are just sitting there floating in a folder called Procreate in my main sort of document section. And then if there is a stack in Procreate where it's like I had to do 5 versions of the file and I've got them all stacked into one grouping, I just make a folder in iCloud and I drag all 5 or 6 or whatever it is of them into there. And that's how I store all of my Procreate stuff. Then, I've only done this once, but when I transition to a new iPad, I just drag them all out and load them all up. And then for, like, for instance, my video stuff, I do all of that via Google Drive, because it's just easier to throw everything onto the computer and do it that way. And I already pay for like past backups of things that I keep on there. So that's all done in a filing system where I just have one folder called like YouTube videos. And then within there, there's a master folder that has all the videos that are on YouTube. And then I have a folder for each video that is that does not include the video file. It's just the thumbnail and of different resolutions and the art at different resolutions. And that's it. And so right now, with the way I live my life doing all this Procreate stuff, that is the entirety of my filing system. And then of course, because I'm using iDevices, all the pieces when I save them out are on my iPad and they are in my photos, just sitting in my photos. One thing that I've always thought to do, and I just haven't gotten around to do it, is just create a folder in my photos that's Procreate pieces and throw them all into there. But for now, I can access them all many different ways anyhow, so that's it. So I keep it pretty damn clean. I am a bit of an organizational freak when it comes to that type of stuff. I'm that way with like my music and my movies and like everything that's along those lines. So this is just my system. That's how it works really well for me. iCloud because of the really good integration with Procreate, and Google Drive for everything else. Justice Mustache asks, why do you live in Barcelona? So I kind of covered this before, but to sort of reiterate, I was working in video games in Germany, and I got an offer from a different company in Spain, here in Barcelona, and so it seemed like a really good opportunity, so I took it, and then moved from Hamburg, Germany to Barcelona, Spain. As I think I said before, I've lived here about a year and a half, and I work in video games, so that's what I'm doing in Barcelona, Spain. This was kind of repetitive to the other question, but I wanted to make sure that I got to everyone, and I don't think I can really give any more insight into that. It's just that simple. Told by 3 asks, how do you feel about 3D artists modeling your work? I love 3D artists modeling my work. The only thing that I ever ask is that if you post it somewhere, you just list credit for the concept. That's it. And then the other thing I guess I ask is that you show it to me, because I think that shit is awesome and I love seeing it. And with some people too, I've even worked with them a little bit. They've asked for some feedback or ask for like clarity on something, and I'm happy to provide it, because at the end of the day, if the model ends up looking super cool and everybody digs it, and then they also like the concept and they want to see the concept, I mean, that helps us both out. So yeah, like if you're a 3D modeler out there and you want to model one of my things, reach out to me and I'm happy to even help if I've got time. Okay, this is a long one. So Lex Illustration, or Illust, says, hi Mike, I love your work in general, especially your facial features. They are so different to each other and are very unique. She goes on to say positive things about Select Paint, Select Clear, but she has trouble with her layers and she doesn't know how many she should have for shadows. She says, do you have only one occlusion shadow layer or one regular shadow layer, or even 3 or more? She goes on to mention skylights and ambient shadows and all this kind of stuff, and then she says she loves my work one last time. I'm assuming it's a she because of the icon and the name. If you're not a she, I apologize. So first of all, thank you so much for all of the kind words. That's very nice of you. I really do appreciate it. As far as the layers are concerned and the lighting and all of that stuff, I think that to keep things really simple first, let's just say there's one ambient occlusion shadow layer, and then like one like direct light shadow layer, and maybe you have one more there that's kind of like for helping you communicate form or something like that a little bit more. Now that's just me saying that, like, if you're either starting out or you're trying to learn aspects of like the way I paint or the way some others paint, like that's a good way of keeping it simple. However, I don't know that it should be so prescriptive. The way that I try to teach, or the way that anybody tries to teach, is it does to some degree have to be prescriptive at certain levels. You have to sort of straight up say to somebody, like, use this pencil and draw a line like this, until they've developed what they need in order to explore on their own and all of that. So depending on your skill level, I would say let's keep it simple, and maybe even don't even do that many shadow layers. Maybe just start with like doing a direct shadow layer, similar to how you might see in like animation or something like that. Now, when it gets a little bit more complex, though, is where those like strict rules start breaking down. I would say that, as you sort of mentioned with like daylight, like different lighting scenarios will require different lighting setups, which will also impact how many layers you use. based on your comfortability. Also, there are people out there that don't even use layers. They are comfortable working that way, and so layer management's less of a thing for those types of people, those types of artists. So as you're doing this, let's say you're following all of my videos on here, try the techniques that I'm showing, but then when you're feeling like you're struggling with something or you're not sure about something, just start experimenting a little bit. Maybe make a new layer, try something with that new layer. Maybe you're at a point where you're not quite communicating something that you're looking for, and you're like, oh, I wish I could just get some extra depth here or some definition here or something like that. But unfortunately, I've used all my layers already. Like, don't think that way. Instead, just think like, okay, well, what if I just throw another layer in here? Something that I believe I do on the piece that's actually running right now on screen, and a bunch of others, is something that I've been recently referring to as support layers. And those are layers where I've got my shadows, I've got sort of all these things that are like these big fat components of my art, and then I'm just like, but I wish I could communicate the form of that nose a little bit better, or that part of her body is turning form into the distance, and I wish I could shadow that a little, but I've used my layer. So then I'll just throw a new layer on with a really low opacity, still multiplies, still a shadow layer, and I'll start defining that using that new layer. Maybe I'll have to do 2, maybe I'll have to do 3, who knows. The point is that when you get to the point where you know what you're trying to achieve, and you've also used all of these tools, and you're still finding that you're not getting there, that's when the experimentation comes into play, which is derived from you understanding why you're doing all of these other things anyways. If you understand why there's this layer or that layer, or why we're putting light in a certain way, or form is handled in a certain way, then that means when things change on you, you can react to them. That's pretty much true with like any type of problem solving on the planet. You can either be taught the prescriptive steps, and then you'll always be able to solve that type of a problem, but then when the problem starts changing on you and it goes outside of what that process shows you, then you can maybe not know what to do at all. But if you understand, you first do those steps because they're taught to you, but then over time you go, well, why are these steps? Is it, oh, it's because of this, and if you do this before you do this, then it helps with this. And then that takes you to a point where you eventually can say, actually, I can pull out that step, I'll do these 2 other steps later, and I like the result better, and you can actually play with it. So, how many layers do you need? The true answer is however many you want. 1, 100, whatever. Well, probably in Procreate, not 100, but whatever you want. The simple answer is I usually am showing on my videos, like, let's say 2 or 3 for the like main aspects of the shadowing. But then, of course, it can go much more beyond that depending on exactly what I'm trying to achieve. And I would encourage you to think similarly. Pina Culoda, she asks, who inspires you the most in life as an artist, and what are some of the things you did to get better? As for who or what inspires me, I already spoke about the artists that inspire me or influence me. Other things that inspire me are definitely music. Music is a huge part of my life, and I think that my main sort of musical background, as far as what I listen to and what has influenced me and has even helped shape some of the way I think about things, is punk rock and ska. Those are the 2 main sort of types of music that I listen to, that I would say that I have like the most knowledge around and identify with from a subject matter point of view the most. And for those who want more specifics, that's specifically third wave ska, although I listen to all of it, and Punk rock, I mean, I listen to essentially all of it, but mostly the stuff that starts in like the early 80s and then up until now, more or less. There's certain pockets that I like and certain pockets that I don't like. That's not to say that I don't listen to anything else. I basically listen to like something from everything, at least. I have a lot of big influences around like Tom Waits, and I listen to a lot of jazz. Jazz in general is a big influence on me. That's sort of why I use that like nondescript jazz in the background of everything. I wish I could use like some of my favorites, but I don't want to get copyright strikes. So instead, I use the Creative Commons stuff from Kevin MacLeod, which is also super great, and that guy does a great service for everyone. But anyways, back to the main topic. So that's the kind of stuff that inspires me, and the type of people that inspire me are the people who come from those circles. Around ska, there's tons of talk about equality for sort of like all types of people, and like in general getting along and fighting against those who want to do bad things. I mean, I'm speaking very generically because I don't want to get bogged down in just talking about like all the philosophy behind ska, and then by extension punk rock and all that stuff. But there's just so much in that inspires me and powers the things that I do every day, whether it's just a conversation I'm having with somebody all the way down to the art that I produce. When I'm doing art like the piece you see actually happening in the background here, where it's almost this sort of like fashion oriented average people type thing, I actually do get inspired by random people that I see all the time. I wouldn't consider myself a fashion focused person. I basically wear like jeans and a black shirt every day, but I am very aware of the people who do push that a lot or follow trends. And so when I'm like walking through the city, or I'm on the train or whatever it is, I am sort of trying to, as much as I can, like catalog the people that I'm seeing and what they're wearing and how they're doing their hair and all those types of things, so that it will potentially end up in some sort of a piece like this that I do. That is a huge inspiration for me as well. Real quick, so that I don't get bogged down in inspiration, and because I feel like that can go on forever, what are things that I do to get better? It's really actually something like that, observing my surroundings and trying to channel that into the art. That helps me get better, especially with character design. And I try to do new things. I think that people maybe don't see the new things that I'm doing, because they expect, when I say new things, they expect me to be doing something big, like, oh, I drew a monster truck this time and I never do that or whatever. But instead, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to work in the spaces that really inspire me and then find new things to do within that. And so that's why you see me basically only do character work here, because that's the thing that interests me the most. I don't really care about anything else. I'll do it for work, but if you just tell me to sit down and have fun, those other things aren't really necessarily fun for me. So then I try to stretch myself within those categories, like character design or illustration or portrait or whatever it is. So I think the ultimate point there is just, I try to find ways to say, well, I'm sitting down to do this painting or this drawing. What's something that I can do that's a little bit different? Is it anatomical? Is it the treatment? Is it something with graphic design that supports the illustration? What is it? And I just try to do a little something here or there, even if it's super small and the viewer can't really notice it, something for me, and then maybe that manifests in a bigger, better way down the line. I want to also just quickly say that type of question around what do you do to get better, I think that's awesome, and that's a great mindset to be in. For you and for anybody who's listening, think about like what inspires you to get better, and find methods by which you can then tap into that. Because getting better is something that I think over time kind of leaves people's intentions, and it's best to always try to keep that going even when it gets hard, so that you're always growing, and then you'll never find yourself sort of out of step with anything, whether it's the pace of technology or new methods or anything like that. So just keep that mentality, focus on trying to stay good and sharp and growing and growing and growing, and you'll always be in a good spot. NMLSS, which I think is nameless, asks, does it really matter to have a portfolio on a specific pro website, or just having an Instagram account where you only post your works is enough? I like this question because I'm passionate about this kind of a topic. So the question of whether or not you need to be on a pro website or not, the answer is yes, you do have to be on a pro website. Now, should you have an Instagram account? Yeah, you should. You should have all of this shit. The thing is that if you are a certain type of artist, and certain type can mean lots of things. It can mean famous, it can mean well-connected, it can mean you have a reputation, so maybe that's not about being famous, but maybe in the industry, people know of you as someone who does X, Y, and Z. Maybe you're just really reliable, or you do really great work, or whatever it is. Those types of people maybe don't have to have these things. I mean, when you think of maybe your absolute favorite famous artist who's totally killing it out there, and you're like, oh, they don't have an art station or whatever it is, that's fine for them. And if you can achieve that type of fame or that type of desirability or whatever it is, that's super good for you. I would assume, though, that most of the people watching this channel, or maybe even you who asked this question, that you're not that person. So the question is, what kind of an artist are you? Well, if you're sort of anyone who's looking to get paid to do art, it goes back to what I answered in the other questions about how to get a job. Being known, having people be aware of you, is one of the absolute most important things you can do. Now, where are people going to be looking for you? They're going to be looking for you in all of the standard places first. Recruiters and art directors and anyone who might have a fistful of cash that they want to give you to make art, they will probably have some little special ways that they will go about also trying to find candidates. Like, oh, I always use this one really weird website, or I've got a bunch of friends and we have a network that we maintain, or whatever the hell it is. But that is a special circumstance that not everybody is going to have, and even the people who are going to have that, it might not be efficient. It might be more about targeting specific people that they already know or have worked with, or their company has already reached out to in the past and they've been waiting for them to free up or something like that. I mean, there's so many variables there, but the only thing that you can control is being in as many of those places as possible. So the question is, should I have a pro website or be on a pro website, or is an Instagram okay? The answer is actually, like, just do them both and do even more. Be on ArtStation, be even on DeviantArt. I know that a lot of people like to joke about DeviantArt these days, but like, who gives a shit? Like, be there. Be anywhere, because you don't know if that recruiter who's looking to fill that art role, if that person used to be a frequent DeviantArt person and they still go to DeviantArt just for the fun of it. Recruiters and hiring managers and all of that will go to any website they possibly can to find the candidates that they're looking for, and if they have natural proclivities to some sites, then they will absolutely go there either first, or they're already on there anyways, and maybe they notice you one random day, and then later a job opens up that they can hire for that is a perfect fit for you. And if you weren't there and you weren't noticed by them, then you missed that opportunity. So where should you be? You should be everywhere. ArtStation, DeviantArt, Instagram. Make a Pinterest account and make boards that's just your art. It's easy for people to find you that way. Absolutely. Have a LinkedIn. Have a Behance. Actually, I will admit I'm bad with that. I don't have that. I have one because I just have one, but I don't use it. Procreate even has their own gallery thing. Fuck it, like, put your stuff up there. Put your work everywhere. And there are going to be some people out there who are successful who are going to hear me say that, and they're going to say, well, I don't do that. Like, that, I don't do social media or whatever it is. good for fucking you. That's not everybody. And there's no reason to say, I'm not going to take an extra 5 minutes to put this art somewhere else. So I'm pretty aggressive on this topic, and if I sound like I'm starting to get like a little, like, I don't know, worked up, I'm not really worked up, but just maybe a little bit more animated or something like that. That's because this topic I think is super important. There are so many artists that I meet, and I meet a lot of artists who are trying to figure out their career, because I've been running Sketchbomb for 10 years now. I ran it in San Francisco and took a break while I was in Germany, and now I run the one here in Barcelona. And I talk to artists all the time that are asking me, how do I get this job? And as I answered in that previous question, make yourself known, put yourself absolutely everywhere. And if you're successful and you're not putting yourself everywhere, that's fine. You're not part of this conversation. People who can't get that work, they can't seem to plug it together, they can't get noticed, that's who I'm talking to with this. So put your art absolutely everywhere, all the time, as often as you can. Be present, let people know you exist so that they can try and find you and give you that job that you are qualified for, because now they know about you. Sad Drawings, oh that's sad, asks, I'm using Procreate for 3 years, but I also switched to other apps like Infinite Painter, Art Studio Pro. Have you considered making overview or impressions about art apps on the iPad? I actually have considered doing this, however I decided not to. It's not for any type of loyalty reasons or anything like that. It's just because I just assumed that's what people would think. It's just because really truly getting to know an app and understanding it and making sure that you can communicate to people that it's really good for something means that you need to use it a ton. And in order for me to use something a lot, that means that I'm going to be working on it for hours, really trying to learn the painting process with that particular app, and then I've now wasted an opportunity to do an illustration that I would also do for the channel or something like that. I have almost no time to do the work that I do here and what you see on the channel, and trying to take on something like that and like miss opportunities would set me back like big time. In fact, I'm going to be behind on Instagram posts, and I mean behind, like, just I won't have much to post for a while, not like I have a schedule now, because I've been working on this Q&A video actually for a while, and so there's going to be things that I won't have accomplished because of it. So anytime I'm doing like a video or a piece that's not going directly to art and then a subsequent Procreate video of that art means that I've kind of wasted some time. So even though that might be interesting to some people, I don't really think the value is there ultimately. Okay, I'm going to do my best with this name. Soul Coronatam asks, hello, I've been sticking with your channel for a while now, don't remember when exactly. What do you consider is a good exercise to get better at your weakest skills in art? I think getting better at your weaker skills in art is a fairly simple answer. It's just you got to do it. You got to practice, and with art, you just have to do the thing over and over and over again, and then you get better at the thing. I think the sort of thing that's more interesting maybe to talk about is how you get in the mindset of doing something that maybe you don't want to do. It's something that doesn't inspire you that much, but you know that it's part of being good at whatever your artistic profession is. For instance, I mentioned in one of the previous questions that I like doing characters. I don't really like doing other things, though I can do other things because when my job requires it, I do it. I think that what I do in those types of scenarios is I try to construct a situation where I'm excited about it. And so, for instance, let's say I'm designing a building. I try to find something really interesting about the building and something that I can almost put character into it that then makes me think of it that way, and it kind of gets me a little bit more excited about it, and then actually going through the motions of doing it is a lot easier. I think that learning is the exact same way. Maybe you aren't good at something that you need to get better at because it just doesn't interest you. So how do you get the interest in there? Well, if you're doing it just for the purposes of growth and training, you can do whatever you want that gets you interested. So for instance, let's look at the picture that's actually being drawn in the background. Let's say I didn't like doing mechanical stuff, but I really like doing characters, in this case a female human. So what I did was I made a reason to get the mechanical stuff in with a character so that I could do this sort of mechanical learning. Although in this case, I just was having fun. I'm just saying as like a hypothetical. It's like, okay, I'm going to teach myself how to do these aspects of these mechanical things. And then I've also got this character in there that I'm excited about, and I can deliver on the character and get really excited about the character. And now I'm making the robot arm complement her, and so I can get excited about robotics. So as I said, that wasn't the goal when I actually did this piece, but that's an example of a way you could do that. Let's say you're trying to get better at an environment, at environment illustration in general, but you are a vehicle person. Then, I mean, that one's pretty simple, I think. Get a really cool vehicle, one that you're really excited about in that environment, doing something that just really inspires you. And it's one of those pieces where you're like, I have to finish this. Even if I hit a low point, the idea is too cool for me to not finish it. And then you end up having to learn background stuff. You start figuring out how you're going to solve that because you're ultimately trying to serve the vehicle that you've got in there. And you know that you're going to be excited to draw the vehicle, so you put all of the work into, you put all the excitement into the vehicle, but then you put the work into the background in order to support that. So it's sort of a way to trick yourself into saying like, oh, it's like when you've got a dinner plate and the vegetables are there and they're surrounded by all the other things you like, and every now and then you kind of pick at the vegetable while you're eating the other things you like, and then someday maybe you like that vegetable. It's kind of the same process. So basically the only way to get better is to do. I mean, there's also learning involved, which is like, if you have no idea on how to do something, find material, because, you know, a lot of people have already done these things. Don't do all that work on your own. Learn from people who've already figured things out. Then when you actually go to do, try to construct a scenario in which you are very excited about the illustration or the drawing or the whatever it is as a whole, so that you are spurred to get through the parts that are more challenging and more dejecting. Because when we're not good at something, it can be really dejecting, and that's a good way to get around it, by building all these other things that you are good at around it to compel you to do it. Joa asks, hey, I love your works and I would love to know if you would do portfolio reviews or maybe some classes. All the love to you. So I do portfolio reviews for people, although I don't really have the time usually to do an in-depth portfolio review. I've had people hit me up, and some people I don't get back to just because I forget and it slips my mind. Other people I can get back to, and I actually try to focus more on one piece than an entire portfolio review. Usually a portfolio review, when it's in the broad, is more about expand the stuff that's in your portfolio, make it higher quality for the industry, just sort of generic things like that. But when you actually talk about a piece, you can drill in a little bit more on specifics and what can be corrected in there. So I do them, but usually people reach out to me on something like ArtStation or in the messages on Instagram for something like that. But as far as classes go, I'd love to do classes. I like teaching, but I just don't have the time. That's the only problem. That's the whole reason why on this channel I don't do a lot of off-the-camera recordings, or I don't record my hands doing things for the entirety of a piece. I just don't have the ability to sit down in an unbroken amount of time and work on a piece of art. I used to do that a long time ago on a website called Livestream. I don't know if it still exists. I don't know if my account is still there, but I used to do that before kids, when I was still freelancing, when I had just time, and I just don't anymore. And that's why these time lapses work out really well, because it's not continuous time. It's all broken up into segments, and then I get to put it all together. So unfortunately, no classes or things like that coming anytime soon, but I will continue to do this. And if you have any questions, I always try to make my answers sort of specific if people have questions. Hopefully that'll help. The Digital Noodle asks, how often do you draw for yourself and how many bad drawings do you get through until you get something you're remotely happy with? I draw for myself essentially as frequently as you all see a piece come out. All the stuff that I do in my free time is ultimately ends up being a video here. Just because, again, with my limited time, this is what I do for fun, and then the fact that Procreate kind of allows me to get a freebie video out of every illustration because of the time lapse. I post it. So if you see me posting something here, I did it for fun. I don't really these days draw anything that doesn't make it onto social media in some way, just because I don't have the free time to produce so much that I could withhold stuff. Years ago, when I was more of a concept artist and not an art director, I did a lot more just work and a lot more sketches and a lot more of that kind of stuff that just sort of gets squirreled away in a folder somewhere, and then occasionally I would like pull it out and color it or something like that. But nowadays, not that much. And as far as how many like drawings and stuff do I go through before I find something I'm remotely happy with, I actually I have a pretty good hit rate with myself as far as that's concerned. It's because I've kind of always designed on paper, and when I'm providing something for professional use, I'll do tons of iterations, and that's a lot more about sort of like churning through the crap and trying to get to all the good stuff and all that. But when I'm doing work for myself, since I get to call all the shots and I get to just sort of go with my own inspiration, it'll literally be like I do a super rough sketch. I know where the rest of that's going to go. It's even just like a rough anatomical proportions, and I'm like, nope, next. And so I do it like really, really quickly. I draw a nose, nope, erase it, redraw it. So that loop is actually really fast. So I don't have a lot where I've like drawn a lot of the piece and then I've been like, no, okay, no, put that away or whatever. That said, I do have an on hold folder with like all the stuff that I haven't taken to finish, and that's pretty large, but it's, I think, still smaller than what my total output is, like I said, from what you see on the channel and things like that. It helps when all you're doing is following your own inspiration and calling all the shots. You can keep that hit rate a little bit higher, I think, than, especially if you were doing it for like a client or something. Leo Brew asks, hey Mike, can you tell me more about the smudging process, how you do it, and where to apply when doing the shadows? So I show this in a lot of videos, but it's all part of the time lapse. I actually break down the smudging process in this video right here. I'll have some of it playing in the background so you can just see a little smidge of it. So the video is called Rose, and if you go find that one, it wasn't that long ago. It's of Rose from Street Fighter, and there's a part towards the end where I actually show in a very simple way where it's just on a sphere how to blend everything. So I hope that shows you exactly what you're looking for. The Fizz Factor asks, what's the history behind your username and how do you pronounce it properly? So my name, my online user handle is pronounced Zatransis. Now, if you do not know how to pronounce it properly, that makes sense because it's not really a real word or a real name aside from my username, actually. So the history behind the name Zatransis is a long time ago. A friend of mine got into a new game called EverQuest, and he was trying to convince me to play. And even though I was certainly a full-blown nerd and played tons of video games and all that kind of stuff, there was something about EverQuest where I was like, I don't feel like I'm going to really like it. And he's like, no, come over to my house, we'll start a character on the server, and you can start playing. And you'll just try it out. And then I ended up spending something like 6 hours at his house playing some Dark Elf that I had made at the time on his account. Then, when Ruins of Kunark, the first expansion, came out, I was like, okay, I'm gonna actually get into this now. And so I rolled an Ixar Necromancer, but I was still convinced that, like, even though I enjoyed the game, that I wasn't gonna play it for like a really long time. And so I just clicked the random name generation button until it landed on something that I was like, yeah, okay, fine, that sounds like a lizard man necromancer, go. Then I started playing EverQuest, and I played EverQuest for a really long time, and I played it a lot. And then I was a part of a guild, and in order to interact with the guild outside of the game, I needed an email address. So I just fired up a Hotmail address with that name. Obviously, it was really easy to take because it was a randomly generated name. And then because I ended up using that email for like everything, that slowly became the thing where I was like, okay, well, I'm signing up for this website, I'll use that, and I'm signing up for that, and this forum, and this, signing up for DeviantArt, signing up for conceptart.org, signing up for all these old websites. And it just was the thing that I ended up using. And the thing that was awesome about it, though, was that since it was randomly generated, like, nobody had this name anywhere. I have never put my name into something trying to create an account and had it be like, nope, this is taken. That actually has happened to me once or twice, but it was because I already had an account and I didn't realize it. But anyways, that is the history of the name. It comes from EverQuest, and then just through convenience was the right thing to keep on using. So yeah, if you're looking for it, how to pronounce my name, Zatransis, or you could just say Mike, or you could just say Zat, or just say hey you, and I'll respond to that just about any time. And the Digital Noodle asks again, 2 more for you. Why do you create and post your demos? And something to end the episode with. Finally, what have you got planned for the future? Why do I do these demos? I think I do these demos for a few reasons. Some of them altruistic and some of them selfish. I do them because I definitely... So ever since I started in my career, where my career was actually anything that I could call a career, I'd been asked to speak at like schools or to come to portfolio reviews and talk to kids, and there were kids that were still in college. And something that was really clear to me early on was that when it comes to art, some people know what they're doing and they gravitate towards it, and they have like this just proclivity where they can solve everything, and it comes really easily to them. And for basically like everyone else, because that's only a few people, we're all just trying to like solve this one step at a time. And advice in the art world doesn't come as easily to a lot of people as I think pros think it does. And the reason why I single out pros is because once you're in a studio and you're surrounded by a bunch of artists talking about techniques and like, hey, what are you working on, and all that kind of stuff, that comes very easily. Probably not as easily as it should, but it does still come very easily. And for a lot of people, they don't have access to that type of a thing. So when I started Sketchbomb in San Francisco, one of the main groups of people who would show up to Sketchbomb were people who weren't professionals in the industry, and they wanted to be around artists, and they wanted to talk about art, and they wanted to maybe not so much share techniques, but just kind of look over the shoulder of people and kind of commiserate occasionally. And so that is all to say that that's something that I feel like I can provide by doing these videos. I can talk about the trials and tribulations of being an artist. I can talk about how great things can be. I can talk about the actual specific techniques. And I think that for people out there who don't have access to those types of conversations regularly, it's helpful. And I like that it's helpful, and I've been told that it's helpful by people, and that is something that keeps me going. I think that that is the altruistic side of it. The selfish side of it is I just like making things, and every time I make more and more of anything like art, or I found lots of enjoyment in making these videos, it starts becoming like a drug, and you just kind of want to keep doing it. And the last sort of selfish reason is doing things like this can help you both as an artist, and it can help you in your career. And that's why I have actually said to artists that every artist on the planet, no matter how good they think they are or how bad they think they are, they should do these types of tutorials. You don't have to post them where people can see them, although I think you should, just because you get feedback, and that's good. But it teaches you a lot about yourself and your process, and it also shows other people that you can talk about your process and you can communicate well. At least you can attempt to communicate well, and that is very, very valuable, both from like a you growing as a person as well as you finding opportunities out there. So going back to what I said about trying to be on every website you possibly can, well, if you don't feel like you can be on something like YouTube because you're not a YouTuber, you're not a personality, and you're not out there like, hey guys, welcome to Fortnite and all that kind of stuff. Like, you are an artist, and now with a tool like Procreate, you can spit out a video and you can just talk about it. I mean, that's really all this channel is. And sure, I'm not the biggest channel on the planet, but it is a nice representation of me on the internet that I can hand somebody and I can be like, check it out, this is something that I can do. So those are the reasons why I do these videos, and I think those are the reasons why you all should do videos like these as well. As for my plans for the future, I don't really like making too many plans for the future. I know that makes me sound like I'm unambitious or like reckless or something, but with something like this channel and what I plan on doing with it, or just what I plan on doing with my art, I don't like to be too prescriptive about the future. So I think that the plan right now is to just keep doing these, keep listening to what people want to see, do my best to deliver on it when I can, and yeah, that's kind of it. Just kind of keep on trucking and keep making art that makes me happy, and see where it all goes. So that's the Q&A for this year. Sorry to all the mispronounced names. I did my best. You know how usernames are. But thank you for your questions. Without the questions, we wouldn't even be doing this. And thank you for watching. Thank you for all the support on this channel, all the watching you've done over all of the, well, at this point, years, all the videos, and I'll see you on the next one. And if you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.